Hey everyone, how you doing today? Welcome to Inside Track. I believe this is episode 7, and I can't believe I've already done 7 of these. So if you're new to this channel, my name's Pete Calandra. I'm a keyboard player, a composer, I'm a college professor. I've written music for films and television. I had a long career playing piano in New York City. And this is my weekly broadcast live stream where I pick a topic and just spend an hour or so going over it. It's music education, exploration, and it's so far mostly been focused towards composers, but I'll be going into some other topics. I did do something on mixing. I might do some more stuff on mixing going forward. But before we continue on, in the description box below, there's a link to a free standard MIDI file or SMF that can be imported into any DAW or notation program where you can look at some of the stuff that we are going over today. And if you like this kind of content, give a thumbs up. For more of this, please subscribe, and to be notified, ring that bell. Doing those actions can really help the channel. More likes, more comments, and YouTube's algorithms suggest this to more people, and it's good for the channel, and I really like doing this, and I'd like the channel to grow a little bit more. So I am monitoring the chat room. There's a little bit of latency, so if you leave a question, may take me a minute to get to it, but I'll be looking up there and answering any questions you have. If this is afterwards and you're watching this on replay in the future, leave any questions in the comment section, and I will certainly get to look at them. So today I thought that we'd take a look at odd time signatures, rhythm, and stuff in that ballpark. And the reason for that is there are a couple of reasons for that. The first one is that I find that when I look at a lot of music from younger composers, they're writing typically in 4/4. And there's been quite a lot of film music that uses odd time signatures, but there's also been quite a lot of jazz and popular music that uses odd time signatures. And also stuff like what Steve Reich did with phase music and systems music. We'll take a little bit of a look at that. And certainly progressive rock uses all sorts of odd time signatures, but we're not going to be really touching on that because that's not a genre that I'm really familiar with. I do love the band Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but as far as contemporary progressive music, I'm woefully ignorant about that. So I'll leave that to people who know more about that subject than I do. So what I like to do is start off with a little bit of definitions of stuff. So let's talk about time signature. So in a time signature, right, the top number and the top number only, or what's known as the numerator, if you're thinking about it as a fraction, describes the type of meter, and the bottom number is what kind of note gets the beat. So the following are top numbers that always correspond to the type of meter. So a simple duple, 2, for example, we've got 2, 4, which means that there's 2 beats in a measure and a quarter note gets the beat. And obviously, I know that a lot of you probably know this already, but there are this is for basic beginners and intermediate, this whole lesson. Simple triple would be 3, 4. Simple quadruple would be 4, 4. Compound duple would be 6, 8, meaning that there are 2 beats. You count it 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Compound triple would be 9, 8, which means 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, and compound quadruple will be 12, 8, like 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. You see a lot of blues music being played in 12, 8. That kind of a beat. Now, as far as odd time signatures, the top number, this is my own way of looking at this. The top number cannot be divided evenly by 2 or 3. And so examples of that would be 5, 4, 7, 4, 11, 8, right? So let's take a look at some music. I've got some examples that we can get into. So let's get over to Pro Tools and let's hit return. Okay. So here I've got an example right here of something in 5/4. So let me just play this little figure for you. And this is basic, and then I'm going to make it more complex as we go along. Right, so there's 5 quarter notes in each measure, and I'll count it as I play it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. And if we look at the notation for that, there we go. Now, this brings us to the audio volume is low. Okay, yeah. How's that, Harry? Is that better? Because it seems to be going good here on this end. Let me know if that's better. Yeah, maybe I should just get the microphone closer to me. That might help. All right. So if we look at this first bit, right, and we listen to the what I want to introduce here is groupings. So 5/4, we can break that up into 2 groups, a group of 3 and a group of 2. Yeah, I think it's that the microphone wasn't close to my face. That's what it was, because I'm getting a good signal out of my mixer here and into OBS. All right, so what do I mean by that? If we look at the first bit here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And I've accented it that way. You can hear those notes being a little bit louder. Do, dee, do, dee. Right? Now, another way to look at that is that would be a dotted half note and a half note, right? So the dotted half note would have 3 beats and a half note would have 2 beats. So if we were to do a little accompaniment with that, right? So you could see that I'm doing in the bottom here. And if, for those of you that can't read music, we can look at piano notation. We've got 1, 2, 3 beats. Well, right? These are 3 beats here and then 2 beats here, right? This is not quantized, so it's not completely on the grid, but you get the idea. 1, 2, 3. Now, that's good. So that means that that's one of the tenets of writing in odd meters is the groupings of 2 and 3, right? And how you set those to music. So let's take a look at this next bit. Let's see. Let's close this window and we'll go here. So we've got okay, so what this is here is, I can click on those and open these up and then go back to notation, right? So here what I've done is I've broken this up into something where there's 4 notes in the accompaniment over this 5/4 figure. And so if we break this up into 3 and 2, right, we can make the 3 beats, we can chop that in half so that we got 3 eighth notes and 3 eighth notes and then 2 quarter notes. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So in other words, 1, 2, 3, 1. Let's see, I'm fast, so it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. And now you're starting to see like you've got a cool groove going there, right? So we've got this quarter note ostinato going in the piano, and then the pizzicato strings are giving us a really nice, it's almost like a tumbao rhythm from Afro-Cuban music, except it's square on the downbeat instead of anticipating it. And already you're getting a sense of it's something that's accessible and relatable, right? It's easy to follow. Boom, doom, bum, 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 dum, bum, 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 bum. That's pretty easy to follow rhythmically, but it's not dot, 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's tuck it, 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 tuck it. And, you know, those first two beats are kind of expansive because they're a little bit longer. They're an extra eighth note. And then those last two beats kind of drive you into the next downbeat. So in other words, so what am I talking about when I say that? These last two notes here, right? Do, do, doom. Do, do, doom. They should, when you're phrasing that, they should lead into the downbeat. So it should be do, 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 do. Let's see. Let me see if pianos. Yep. So if I were to play that, right? So it's not, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, ba, 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 doom, da, da, bum, choo, da, da, dum, right? So it leads right into that downbeat, and it gives it sort of like a propulsion there, right? It'd be good if I learned how to speak English. And it almost feels like da, cha, 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 right? It almost feels like it's just 3 beats, even though there's 4 notes in the left hand there, or in the pizzicato strings. Now, moving on to our next bit here, we can add on top of that, I've got this figure in the choir when we're orchestrating this. So that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, but they're holding those notes out really long in dotted half notes and a half note. And then so you're playing that against quarter notes in the piano, these long notes in the vocal, and then that 4-note figure in the pizzicato strings. And you can hear that this has a certain feel to it. Let's unsolo this. So I think that's really kind of cool. It's just a really good way to add something that's, so, you know, one thing I'd like to talk about is that you want to make complex music, but have it sound simple and easy to follow. That's one of my goals when I compose. I want there to be sophistication and complexity of the music and different levels of depth, but I still want people to be able to understand and follow it. I don't want it to be so complicated that it goes right above everybody's head, right? And there are the two main ways that I do that is with rhythmic stuff like this, and also with some of the harmonic stuff, which I've gone over in some of my videos. And if you can add sophistication and still have it be accessible, that's a really good goal, because it can make your music stand out in ways that are a little bit different than just writing a lot of notes and making something where the page is black, you know? Yeah. All right, so now in this next bit, right, I've got in the Coleño strings here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then in the pizzicato strings going against that, I've got an 8th note pulse. Right? So there, I'm doing that, the same figure that the pizzicato strings were doing before in the aggregate. So in other words, I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, but I'm breaking that up into these sort of broken or rolled arpeggios, right? Oh, wait, you can't see that. So let's switch. There we go. So that gives you a little bit more propulsion, right? But if you want to add a melody on top of that, then you could add something that's very slow moving with lots of low notes. And let's unsolo everything. And if we look at the piano here, this is something also to think about, and I'm going to show this a little bit more detail later on. So notice on the first little phrase, the second measure ends on the downbeat, right? Do, dee, do, da. But on the second one, I move this 3-note figure over a beat, and that note lands on the second beat. And so you're sort of displacing the rhythm on that a little bit, right? So you're sort of using that to disguise the downbeat a little bit, right? Just sort of doing things over the bar line a little bit. That's sort of an introduction to that. And I'm going to get into that concept in a little bit. Okay, let's see. What do we have next? Okay, so we're still in 5/4, right? So we've got eighth note groupings. So these are just different ways of laying these out. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then here we've got 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? So we've sort of reversed everything. Do da dee ba do da do da dee da 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 da, right? So accent here, 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 and here. Right, so that's, you can hear the difference in feel between this one So in the first one, those first two beats are very expansive. They almost feel like they're floating a little bit, and then the end of the measure gets busier, right? With the one at 56, which is this one here, let me make that a little bigger for you. This one here, the beginning of the measure is busy, and then the end of the measure seems more expansive. Right? And let's get this scrolling properly. And then let's see how we can add that into a piece. Here we go. All right, so let's break that down a little bit. So we've got our original piano figure, right? And then with the pizzicato strings here are accenting, right? And then I've got some coleños, just giving a little slap to that, a little percussive accent to that. And everybody knows that coleño is taking the back of the bow and slapping the string with it. And then on top of that, I've got this little figure here with the spiccato strings. And with this, right, I came up with something that was a little bit more random, and I'm layering that on top of that figure, and you're starting to get things that are really sound very that can be followed, right, but have like an underlying complexity to them that makes, I think, a really good interest. So in other words, if I were to just play the pizzicato strings and the melody, you can hear that the melody sometimes, like here, let's go to slip mode. Like here, you could see that these notes, right, land together. So in other words, our pizzicato strings and coleño strings are giving us our 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So they're accenting on our groupings of 3 and 2. And sometimes the spiccato strings, which is the blue track, is right with them, and sometimes it's in between, like here. And sometimes it lands right with them, and sometimes it fills in the gap. So you see, you start to get like syncopation in there that's a little bit unusual. So let's listen to that. And also they're a little loud, so bring them down. Right? So you see how that works out really cool. Now, let's try something else. And we've got a little, this is where we have a long melody floating over the top like we did on the previous one, but this time in the oboe, and the oboe has a pickup. So here we've got the reverse with our groupings of 2 and 3, right? So in other words, this piano part is the tukka tukka tikka tikka. And what I've done here with the accompaniment is, so in other words, I've got beat 1 and 2, and then I leave the middle part free, and then beat 5 into the downbeat, right? And that gives us a really cool rhythmic sense right here. So in other words, what I'm doing there is I'm sort of disguising where the downbeat is a little bit. You know where the downbeat is, but if I were to do this, let's see if I can do this without, if I were to do this instead, right, where it's, so in other words, bop, bop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 1, where this note lands on the downbeat, right, that's giving you a strong sense of a downbeat. But doing it this way, where the line starts on 5, goes through the downbeat, and ends up on beat 2, you're sort of playing around with where the downbeat is, and you're sort of disguising it a little bit. And then on top of that, if I were to just do with this spiccato strings, right, you can hear how those accents there add some really nice syncopation and drive. And if I double that, if I just play that with the piano, you can hear how they sort of intertwine. So that's really a really interesting texture for me, a rhythmic bed. And on top of that, I've got this very simple, very memorable, something that's easy to remember, oboe line. And again, I'm starting on 4, 5 into the downbeat here. So it starts on 4, 5 into the downbeat here. And actually, let's do this. And let's hope that we don't crash Pro Tools by opening up all this notation. And let me make it a little smaller. All right, here we go. Here we go, right over here. Actually, I can get that so that's bigger for you all to see. If I move this here and then I zoom in a little bit. Oops. Let's do this. I can get a little bit more in. There we go. All right. The joy of live broadcasting. So I didn't quantize this here, but that's the same rhythm as this over here. Let's do it one more time. All right, so, right, eighth note groupings. So let's move here, combining multiple time signatures. All right, so if we listen right here, everybody okay? You can hear everything, right? And you're able to follow what I'm doing here. So the piano's in 7/8, right? So even though this is all steady notes, you could see that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So 7, 8, I'm breaking up into 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Right? So it's 3 plus 2 is 5, plus another 2 is 7. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then playing with that, I have these pizzicato strings here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Right? So the eighth note pulse is the same, but I'm playing two different time signatures at the same time. So let's take a listen to this. So the thing that's interesting about that is that it's really hard to tell where the downbeat is. So in other words, where everything comes in together. So it's pizzicato strings and then the oboe, and let's try our notation. And let's bring this up here. Right, and let's make that a little bigger so that we can see it. So in other words, we're starting off here. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So where do they all come in at? So that's the beginning of the cycle, right? So you notice that there's a C in the pizzicato strings and on the downbeat, and there's a C right on the downbeat here, our first grouping of 3. So how many measures does that cycle take for it to come all around again? You see right here. So that's from 82 to 92. So that's 10 measures until it comes in again, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And on the downbeat of the 11th measure, it all lines up again, right? So you see what you're doing there is that you're creating this background structure that's incredibly complex numerically. It's all odd. Things aren't in 4s, but everything is simple that everybody's playing, and you just have to line everything up. And then on top of that, you can have a floating melody that really just sounds like it's floating over this groove. So let's take it from one measure before. Let's take it right from 81. Oh, I didn't solo the oboe is muted. Is that right? Yes, it is. Okay, not a problem. Let's take it from 82. Right, and you can hear how I've created this sort of exotic thing by using that Mixolydian scale, I believe it is, the sharp 4 and the flat 7, and you can come up with some. It's not difficult, right? But it's got it just has an interesting character to it that you don't find when things are just in straight 4/4 time. All right, so. When I was, I'm a pianist and I like to improvise. And one of the things I like to do when I'm improvising is to play a repetitive riff that is an odd grouping of notes, and it sort of plays over the bar line. It takes a couple of bars before everything comes back to the downbeat again. This is something that if you like Asian Indian music, they've got something called a tihai, which is a grouping of, like a rhythmic figure that's repeated 3 times, and the end of the third one lands on the downbeat. Something like that. And if you listen to tabla and sitar music, you'll hear stuff like that all the time. So what I like to do when I was soloing would be play figures like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. Right? And so, right, where I play kind of that and it goes over the bar line and people can grab onto it and they can lock in. Six is, I always liked six, and I got that from the great Chuck Leavell. He would do figures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And then, you lock into that and everybody locks into that and you can create some rhythmic excitement and tension. And then when it lands on the downbeat, it's almost like an explosion. It's really a lot of fun. So, but it sort of hides where the bar line is, right? And it makes things very rhythmically complex. So let's take a listen to this here. Right? I'm in 4. And the spiccato strings here. So right here, let's do this. Make this into eighth notes. Right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Or if I go from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then back in. And then so in other words, there's 12 eighth notes, and then this figure repeats again. Right? And I further mess that up because I displace it by starting it on the second eighth note of the bar. So in other words, here's the first eighth note, and then it starts on the second eighth note. So again, let's look at we don't need the pizzicato strings, which is the piano. Let's do it this way. Let's just open this up. We need pizzicato. Is that what we need? Yep. Here we go. No, we're further ahead than that. Hey, I'm messed up here. What's going on? Where am I? Okay, great. So here we go. Right, so here's our 4-note figure. Boop, bop, beep. And notice here I've broken the bar of 4 up into 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. You hear that kind of figure all the time in music, Well, let's get a sustain pedal happening here, please. You hear that kind of figure all the time. And then here we've got our bit, right, where we've got these 12 eighth notes, and then the figure starts again, and it's displaced by 1 eighth note, and it takes a long time before that lines up again. So let's take a listen. Do dum bum 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 bum. And then I've added that colegno in there. And there we go. It ends on the downbeat way over there. So you could see, and the colegno is a little loud. Let me bring the volume on that down. And play that passage again. So the colegno is just accenting rhythmically similarly as the piano, right? It's a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And it's just giving a little bit more. So you can hear all that syncopation in there between the accents in the notes. Right? So that's another way within 4/4 where you can use, combine different time signatures to create some rhythmic interest. Let's listen to this a little bit here. So rhythmic displacement. So this figure now, that same piano figure, starts on beat 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And I'm really accenting with this pizzicato strings right on the downbeat so you can hear where 1 is. And then against that, so I've got that 3, 3, and 2, same rhythmic pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, except it's starting on 1, 2, 3, bop, 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 right? And so it's going from beat 4 and starting again on beat 4 of the next measure. And then that's played against those spiccato strings, which are doing 3, 3, and 2 right on the downbeat. Right, so you're sort of displacing those bits where you've got 3, 3, and 2, which starts on beat 4, and 3, 3, and 2, which starts right on the downbeat, where you're subdividing up the 4 beats into different groups, much like you would with an odd time signature. Okay, so we're moving ahead now, and that's just a bit about some of the things that you can do with odd time signatures, with grouping things into 3 and 2, and how you can write very simple. All the parts are individually very simple and probably easy to technically play on an instrument. But when you play them together, they lock in together and they create a whole that really has some interesting characteristics to it, which is you don't find in stuff that's strictly in 4. Now, I have something here on polyrhythms. Just looking at the time. So we're going to be a little bit long today. That's fine. Maybe an hour and 15 minutes. So here I've got in the pizzicato strings, right here. 1, 2, 2, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and right. So you've got those are eighth notes, and yeah, I've never tried that, Harry. I do think though that Bartók has done Fibonacci series to accents in some of his pieces. I believe I've read that, and I've played a lot of Bartók, but I've never really actually analyzed it on that level. But yeah, that would be something interesting to try. So against that 2, we've got 3 eighth notes in the marimba. So this one is just straight 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in the marimbas. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then when we get over here, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Right? And that's, yeah, Rites of Spring is all over the place with that, Harry. I agree with that totally. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, baka, baka, baka. Right? And so you hear this kind of a thing. There's a song called Afro Blue by, well, I know the Coltrane version, but the original version of that has that kind of 3 against 2 feel to it. And so it's a lot of Afro-Cuban music has some stuff like that in it, right? And then here we've got an example of 4 against 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 3 in the pizzicato strings. Now, the 2 against 3, that's something that as a pianist you should really be able to. You should just really be able to play that as a pianist, be able to play that in both hands, just go back and forth, and 4 against 3. I like 2 against 3 better than I like 4 against 3 as a polyrhythm. But at some point in the 1960s, Steve Reich started doing some experiments with tape machines where he would record something and make a tape loop of a certain length, and then he'd have a similar one of the same length played on a second machine, and the inherent differences in the speed of the tapes going around the loop would mean that the pieces might start off in sync and with all the notes lining up, but at some point they'd get out of phase with each other, where one might be a little bit ahead of the other loop. And so these are kinds of things that led into systems music where the stuff became formally notated, right? Steve Reich and Philip Glass. And you can sort of do stuff like that yourself very easily. So let's go back to our Pro Tools and let's make these tracks a little bit bigger. And I've got this little interlocking figure between two instruments here. And I've got them panned left and right. So if you're wearing headphones now, you've got the Noir felt piano in your left ear. And then you've got Native Instruments una corda. And let's take a look at the notation for those. Right. Let's make that a little bigger. Here we go. And you can see basically this is playing the same thing as the top one in key, a third lower. Let's not have be soloed. Come on, man. Here we go. That's much better. The joys of live presentation. There we go. Very simple, almost like a very hypnotic, meditative rhythm, right? Just free flowing. Now, let's take a look at this here. So here we are starting off, right? And then pretty soon in the bottom system, we're going to drop an eighth note. Drop another one. And you can hear how, right, you're sort of transforming this track. Drop another one there. And every eighth note you drop means that the pattern in the bottom one starts an eighth note earlier. So the pattern starts on the downbeat, then the pattern starts on the and of 4, then the pattern starts on 3, then the pattern starts on the and of 2, then the pattern starts on 2, then the pattern starts on the and of 1, and then the pattern starts on 1 again. So a bunch of measures later, everything locks back up and starts from the beginning. So you've got this longer cycle, this arc of rhythm. So let's see if I've done this correctly where at some point it'll all line up together. So, right, everything's together, downbeats, and then coming up our first syncopation is going to be on the and of 4, right here. Then our next one is going to be on 4, coming up here. Then on the and of 3 coming up, 1, 2, 3, and. And then coming up on 2. You can see how when it gets up back onto 2, it almost sounds much more peaceful. Coming up on the and of 1 soon. There, the and of 2 right there, right? Here we go. Bum. Starting right on 2. And here we go, ending on 1. Right? So that's an interesting concept also. Okay, so now we can do that. So we heard that was 31 against 32. So in other words, the bottom one was 32 pulses. The top one was 32 pulses, and the bottom one was 31, right? So that's how that worked over a longer period of time. Now, if you do something similar and you do 7 against 8, you'll see how that effect happens faster and has a different effect on the listener. There we go. See how it's happening much quicker? So that's interesting, another little interesting concept. All right. So, so let's talk now about in actual use. So I'm going to play a piece of mine that's in an odd time signature. And then I'm going to talk about, there's also a list in the description box of a bunch of popular music, songs that you know, that utilize odd time signatures. And the whole song might not be in an odd time signature, but it has it as part of its structure. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So let me get out a let me go back to here. And let's go to our... Okay, so this is a jazz track of mine for a quartet I had a long time ago. And this is called Neon Beach. And let me just play it, and then I'll talk a little bit about it. So let's go a little bit beforehand. Here we go, coming up. Here we go, right to the bridge right here, and I'll let it play for a little bit. 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, let's take a look at that. Let's break that down a little bit. Now, just for on a technical note, right, that was recorded what's called live to 2-track, which meant that the four of us were in a studio in Chelsea in Manhattan, and we did this. This was recorded in 1990, so a long time ago. Probably, you know, some of you watching this weren't even born yet. And it was with 3 of my buddies, Dale Kleps on soprano saxophone. He was a very busy New York freelancer, and he played in the Charles Mingus Epitaph big band also. That was one of his gigs. He played with the Bob Mintzer big band. He's just very busy. And then my friend Howard Joins on drums, who's very busy playing Broadway shows and doing recording sessions. And Stomu Taka Ishii on bass, another friend of mine who plays with Kong Vu. He played with Eric Freelander, David Tronzo, Paul Moshian. He's a very, very great bass player. And we rehearsed once, and we went in the studio, and we cut this live. So basically, the engineer, we were playing, the engineer was mixing, and it all went to a 2-track tape. And this was like maybe the second to take. I think we did 3 or 4 takes, and we just took the second take, and that's what it is. So hard tune to play. So let's take a look at the notation, and I'll talk about a few things in this. Now, if we look at the left hand here, and let me make that bigger for you guys. Again, we see that I'm baka to baka to baka 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 to baka to baka baka, right? So 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2. Thank you, Opus. So we've got that going, and then let me make this a little smaller so I can read it. Then I've got my melody, right? Right? So what I try to do with that melody there is get something where I have a phrase that leads in and through the downbeat. Right? So it's not... It's right. So even though there was a strong sense of a downbeat, right, you can really get it. You can really hear when I'm playing that you. And you got that nice rhythmic sequence. And what's happening here is, the first 5 notes lead into and go through the downbeat. Then I've got some syncopation. And then now another 3-note group leading past, another 5-note group leading past the downbeat. So in other words, you've got, remember we talked about in some of my previous streams and other things that I've talked about, motivic composing, right? So here's a perfect example of that. A 5-note phrase, syncopation, 5-note per phase, syncopation. Right? And it's repeated 3 times. 2, 2, 3. Right? So there's all that stuff going on over this, like Passacaglia, ostinato, bassline, montuno, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I need to practice this myself. I haven't played this in decades, but seriously. So that's sort of one way where I use odd time signatures. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit out of this Pro Tools session in a few minutes, and show you how I use it in film scores. But what I thought would be kind of cool would be to look at a few very well-known songs, and I've got a list with links in the description box to all this, right? So you can go check this out yourself. If some of these things are almost cliched, right? 5/4 is take 5, do ba do 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 boom bum bum diddly do bum. Mission Impossible theme, bum dum dum bum 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 dum bum bum. And then 7 Days by Sting. 7 Days is really cool because he, like Take 5 and Mission Impossible, they're really punching you in the face that it's in 5/4. Sting's more subtle when he does that. It's really an amazing tune. The way he and with Vinnie Colaiuta on drums, it becomes even really. It's in 5/4, but it doesn't sound like obvious 5/4. It just sort of floats. It's really cool. So let's talk about 7/4, the most famous one. Money by Pink Floyd, right? Salisbury Hill by Peter Gabriel, a song most of you probably don't know, but Tombo in 7/4 by Airto Moreira. There's also a really good Cal Jader and Charlie Bird vibes and guitar player recording of that. Airto Moreira, for those of you that don't know, is an amazing Brazilian percussionist and drummer. He was the original drummer in Chick Corea's Return to Forever. He's on the first 2 albums, and those are groundbreaking albums. And he's also played with Miles Davis a bit, and he's married to the vocalist Flora Purim. Oh, here's another one, Times Like These by Foo Fighters. So we'll talk about, I'll show you some of those in notation in a second, but let's go on to 11/8 or 11/4, the introduction to Whipping Post by Allman Brothers Band, right? 1, 2, 3, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, bum, right? And then the song's in 6, but the beginning of that is in 11/8. The tune is in 6, but then when it goes to the Sometimes I Feel part, that's sort of in 12/8. So they really play around with the time signatures in that song a lot. That's an incredible song, and even though I love the Allman Brothers at the Fillmore East, that's like one of my favorite albums. The vocals on the first Allman Brothers album, Greg Greg's vocals on that are in the studio version of this are just, they're otherworldly, and to think that he was 21 years old when he sang that is mind-boggling. And then another one that uses 11 is I Say a Little Prayer by Burt Bacharach, with Dionne Warwick singing it, and also the great Aretha Franklin. And actually, to be honest with you, when I gigged with Aretha Franklin at the John Harm, yes, I did. I gigged with Aretha Franklin. I'm telling you that. When I gigged with her at the John Harm Center in like 2002 or 3, I was the third keyboard player. I got hired to do a series of concerts with her. I wasn't in her band, but I played with her. We did this song, and it was really cool to be on stage with her with this. So if we look at, I'll take it from the beginning, right, of this song here. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two. All right, here's where we get into it. Right, so if we look at, first of all, Burt Bacharach always does really cool things with time signatures, but we take starting at letter B, and I'll sing the rhythm because I can do that better than reading through this right now. So we've got measure of 4, a measure of 3, and a measure of 4. And then you see that the melodic content is the same here. So you could think of that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4 plus 3 plus 4, or 11. So he's got this pop tune, which was a big hit in the 60s, that has 11 in it, right? And it's done really beautifully. It goes with the lyrics really well. And that's really cool. I love that. So again, sophistication, right? All right, so let's take a look at some of these other songs. And I've got these in the piano. And so this is Foo Fighters, Times Like These. There's a guitar riff in there. It's not the whole song, but... So what's he doing here? He's going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So he's breaking that up into 14, 7. So it's 3/8 notes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Right, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Right, so it's 3 groups of 3 and a group of 2. That adds up to 4 groups of 3 and a group of 2. I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2. Right, so he's breaking that 7/4 up into like almost like 14/8 notes. So that's pretty cool. That adds a really nice thing to it. What's our next bit? Oh, so the next bit is that Tombo in 7/8 by Airto. Whoops. Did not copy correctly. That's what I get for trying to do things quickly. And not double checking. Let's fix that. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's like a measure of 4 and a measure of 3 added together. That's a really beautiful song. I love that song. And then we've got Salisbury Hill, where it's interesting because on a lot of these songs, they have sections of 7 in them. And even Money, a lot of that song is in 7, but when the guitar solo comes, it's in 4/4, right? And then it goes back to 7. And the Foo Fighters, that song is in 4/4, but that guitar riff is in 7. And Tombo has a lot of 7 in it, but the chorus part, which is really catchy, is in 4/4, or cut time actually. But Salisbury Hill is actually mostly in 7. Let's take a look at that with this. and this. Here we go. Why is that not correct? Hold on a second. Okay, give me 1 second. I messed that up. Let me fix that. Here we go. And the melody. So that's really cool when he's got that beginning here with this keyboard with the figure that's in the acoustic 12-string guitar and the drums, right? This thing is very clearly in 7, but when he gets to the verse, he has that, right? Dee, da, da, and then that whole note, and the melody comes in and answers that, right? And it really is cool. And see how he goes over the bar line and everything with this. It's very sophisticated. It's really a great tune. Let's see, are there any questions? All right, so I'm going to close out this session, and then I'm going to open up something from a film score, and hopefully Pro Tools won't crash on me. Ah, great. Okay, so this is, let's go back to here. I forgot to move the, I forgot to go back to the Pro Tools screen. Sorry about that with Peter Gabriel. So this is a film score of mine, a cue from it. So I'm in 4/4. This is not the full mix, this is a rough mix. Right, so I'm in 4/4 right now. 1 and 1. Right, so it changes here, and then I'm going to be going into 7/8 shortly, and we'll take a look at that. And here we go into 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. So, right in that bit there, right, when it goes into 7, you hear that dum ticka tit tat ticka tit in the short strings. But when the part that has like almost like a little bit of a melodic content to it, bum, 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 that's very simple that you can actually almost bum, bum, bum. Right down. Let's do it just the strings. This is going to have bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Right, so you can hear how I've got that those two things going on at the same time. And then I'm just sort of emphasizing with the bass and one of the percussion. But not all of them. Right, you can hear with the percussion that and you can see it right here, that I'm leaving a big hole. So in other words, you got, and then the percussion's out, in. 1, 2, 3, 1. So that's one way that I use 7 in a film score, and we're going to close this session and open up the next one just to save some time. All right, so let's take it from over here. It's got this ambient section here. Now the same figure, right? Orchestrated differently. So that's really spiky, the bass there. But that goes in nice with those short strings there. Right, so that's sort of, I showed you that technique before of combining different pulses. And then you see that there was a measure of 4 in there, right here, a 4/8. Da 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 doom. And then build it up. Got syncopations with those Coligno strings. And then if I add the winds there, right, just doubling the bass. And then you can hear how those syncopations really stick out between the slapping strings and the lower notes. And then now we're back into 4/4. All right, so that brings us to the end of today. It's been an hour and 10 minutes or so of this. An introduction to using all sorts of different ways of using rhythm and time signatures that, you know, hopefully you can do some more digging. There's, you know, you can download the standard MIDI file and take a look at some of these examples yourself, not of my film scores, but of the other Pro Tools session. And you can certainly take a look at that. And I hope that this has been helpful. And leave any questions down below. If you're watching this afterwards, please like, subscribe, ring that bell, share this. There's been somebody on VI Control that's been sharing my videos. If you're watching this now, thank you so much. I thanked you last week. And I'll be doing a live stream concert tomorrow night at 8 p.m. New York time. And if not, I don't see you there. Hopefully I'll see you next Friday for the next episode of Inside Track. I've been Pete Calandra. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.